Okay, Steve.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question. Before you got involved with Scientology, if someone asked you how old you were, what would you have told them?
I would have said 28,
Okay.
29. Right?
After you got involved with Scientology and you learned the truth, how old would you have told someone you were if you...
76 trillion years.
Okay.
Now, I should point out that that's 76 trillion Earth years.
Uh-huh.
But there's different kinds of time. There's linear time, there's chronological time, there's three-dimensional time. On some of my auditing folders, they go back to quadrillions and quintillions of years, because there's a formula to convert that to Earth years. I just wanted to let you know so that there wouldn't be any problem with that.
Okay. Just as a way of our getting started, can you tell me some of the things that you've discovered about your history, both in this life and in your past lives, that came up in the course of your learning about yourself through Scientology?
Well, the first thing I discovered is that I was not a body, that I was a spiritual being, or a thetan, operating a body. And once I had solid reality on that, I found out more about who I am, what I am, where I've been all this time, why I'm here. Much of the data that I know is in this library. There's a tape called The Roll of Earth, which talks about this planet as a prison planet, and that we are here because it's a dumping ground. We're the undesirables, and this is a place where no one else of any knowingness really wants to be, because it's really a place for undesirables, for nonconformists, for the artistic, for criminals, for deviants, you know, different things like that.
How was it that you came to learn about these things? What was the mechanism through which it happened?
Well, through auditing, through training, through data, listening to tapes, reading books, proving a lot of it out on the meter, having it proved out on the meter, having verified some things that I thought could really be. I mean, I never knew why I didn't like certain things in the physical universe. Certain images annoyed me. And
like what, for example?
Well, first I'll give you the earliest example. When I was 6 months old, I refused to drink milk. And of course, in those days, the milk was in glass bottles. They weren't in plastic bottles. And when I was 6 months old, I would take the bottle and smash it against the wall every time my mother would give me a bottle of milk. But yet I would drink apple juice, orange juice. I love orange juice to this day. But milk, smashed against the wall. And my mother eventually gave up. She went into apathy over it. She just didn't give me milk anymore because she didn't want to clean up the glass. But I often wondered how a 6-month-old child who couldn't even speak yet would know to that extent why milk was so bad. And I found out in Scientology that I had been poisoned by a wife who gave me milk to drink, and it was poisoned milk. And that incident carried forward into this lifetime, and naturally I didn't want any part of it.
When were you poisoned?
I was poisoned, actually, you have to understand a little bit about time. And in order to answer the question,
Yeah, tell us about time.
Chronologically, it was in time my last life, but it was actually 8 lifetimes ago. Because when you die and you drop your body, you do a shift in space to the between lives area, and you go through a series of very suppressive implants, which I can describe to you in great detail if you want me to. But I want to get to the point of what I'm saying. You know, then I can go back to this. It would be non sequitur if I did it the other way. Anyway, when you come back to the physical universe, you don't only do a shift in space, but you do a shift in time, and there is no guarantee that if you dropped your body in 1988, you would come back in 1989. You could just as easily come back in the year 1200 or the year 3000. Actually, there is a chronological time stream or range where the Between Lives area is set up where for 3,048 years in either direction, you could actually come back earlier or later. Or you could come back in simultaneous time where you could physically be operating two bodies at once without knowing it. Let's say you died in 1988. You could come back to life in 1962. And you could, for the period from 62 to 88, you're physically operating two bodies as a thetan, but in your own time track, one is really before the other in sequence. But in the chronological time track, which has nothing to do with real time, you're physically operating two bodies. For example, when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, simultaneously someone else invented it in Europe. And when Bessemer invented the steel process, a guy named, I forget the name, but there was someone else who invented steel at the same time. I have it, it's in one of my books.
Book by whom?
By L. Ron Hubbard. And what actually was, these were the same person.
What
They were
book,
the same person?
But operating two different bodies.
what book is it of Hubbard's that discusses this?
It's actually a tape. It's a tape called The History of Man, which I have. I know exactly where to find it on the cassettes. It's the third tape in the series called The History of Man. I know my library.
Okay.